So, Lone Rider here, and I just wanted to briefly mention two things. One is a store-bought buckler, and one is the rehilting of a sword and the reshaping of a blade. So, I wanted to do some sword and buckler stuff. I got to be careful. There's a very low drop ceiling in here, and I made my own buckler. It was actually pretty sturdy. The handle is actually sturdier than on the store-bought one, but also held up pretty well to its first round of drilling and sparring. But I was curious what a store-bought one was like, so I got one of those. Now, this is I think it's like 9 or 10 inches. It's fairly small. And this was, you can find them on Kult of Athena and other purveyors of historical arms and armor reproductions. Um, I went for a small one precisely because as a noob, I didn't like the idea of a large one. Um, the sword and the buckler are used in such a way that they're held separately, but when you strike or when you parry at the moment of impact, they're brought together. And my concern was that the an overly large rim would make that harder and just be more cumbersome. So, well, it probably would offer more protection. It would make it harder to learn the techniques. And it was funny when I took it to the first HEMA gathering I went to with it at the local fencing club. A lot of people commented that they liked it in terms of size better than their own because it was in fact small. So and much more easier to get it close to the sword blade and to make that connection at the moment of impact as they come together and just very handy and maneuverable and so forth. So the one problem with this particular type is that the handle was made basically out of a bar. I mean, out of a metal tube that's been just squished, and because of that, it's kind of loose. You might even be able to see it wiggling there. Um, it's just it's weak where it's bent, so I'm gonna make something out of bar stock and make my own handle at some point. When these do fail, I've heard that's where they fail, so go figure. Um, also it is mild steel, so just wipe it off after you use it. Don't leave sweat on it or anything where it's gonna rust. The rim of the buckler will contact your arm at some points, like there, and if you're sweating, well, there you go. Now, if you're sparring, you're probably wearing a jacket and gloves with cuffs, and it will, cover that area. But if you're just doing drills at home, so something to think about. That's that. The rehilding of the sword. This was my Hanwei Tinker Sharp Longsword blade, and I had a real hard time getting it to cut the way I wanted. And at the same time, I wanted a sword for sword and buckler I-33 stuff. And my Hanwei Norman sword is pretty cool, and I still have it, and I still use it, but it's really not from the right time period. The blade shape's different, the balance is different, etc. So I took a chance and I reshaped the blade on this. I made it blunt on the sides, and then I just cut it off and rounded it. So it's shorter, obviously, than it was as a longsword blade. Um, I cut off the tang, and then I stepped down the end, and then I rounded it. And then a friend of mine had a tap and die set. He put threads on there, and I was able to put. This is a proper pommel. It looks like a regular old nut because what it is it was a pommel from a fencing sword that had sides and facets like a nut, but then was teardrop shaped at the bottom. The problem was I had to cut off the teardrop shape to get it to fit because the tang that stuck out wasn't that long. Anyway, it was just basically the same pommel that was on there when it was a longsword. And then I had a better guard that I put together. This had a mild steel, and it's a little fancier looking, just a little more detail there. Um, the handle is the same handle. I just cut it down. It already had the recess for the tank chiseled out in the two halves, so that was no big deal. But what I did do is I contoured the edges. I rounded it a lot because it was just feeling really blocky as a short one-handed sword handle. So um, it fits nicely in the hand, and it's very easy to. And I have to watch the ceiling, but um, it's just not. Um, I don't know. It's not as cumbersome as you know the earlier type of the Norman sword, the earlier medieval sword type. So um, there you go. Now, ideally, I would have had a bigger heavier pommel to take some of the point of balance back. The point of balance is pretty far out, but and then again, the point of balance is far out on the Hanwei Norman sword. But this does at least have less mass near the end where you're going to be hitting with in practice, and it does. It looks more the part, and it really does feel more like the type of sword that you're supposed to do sword and buckler with. So I went from a sword that was not all that useful as a cutting sword to at least something that's useful for sparring, and I think that's pretty cool. It definitely is usable. So now I just need to get myself another sharp medieval blade because the only sharp swords I have right now are the katana and a couple homemade things I put together. A Langmesser, not Langmesser, a short messer sword rather. The opposite of a Langmesser, which is long knife. Short messer sword made out of a machete and some sharpened sort of swords I tried to make out of mild steel. So this is, now I have something that's good for sparring with I-33, but I'm practicing for I-33, but I do still need a sharp medieval sword, so I'm going to have to try and get my hands on one of those at some point. And now that I know a little bit more about sharpening, I do think that perhaps I should try and just get another blade, another bare blade, maybe not another Hanwei longsword blade, but another bare blade and do my own thing. And certainly if I can, put together a hilt that looks like this this isn't all that finished either. I could polish it up a little more if I wanted. I didn't see a reason to since it was for practice. This crossguard. But, certainly if I can put together something like this just to cut with, I'd be happy to do that. So, yeah. There we go. Lone Rider out.